So I said before, anchors were part of phase 2. Phase 1 begins with creating your story from the future. Not your story about the future, your story from the future. The story from the future is a head, heart, and gut story. It's a story of emotion.
Welcome to Inspired Choice today. I'm your host, Caroline Biesalski, here to bring you authentic stories, surprising lessons, and powerful takeaways to fuel your journey in business and life. In each episode, I'll take you from one inspiring guest to the next, blending their experiences with my expertise to uncover practical strategies you can use right away. Whether you're starting out or stepping up, stay tuned for insights and actionable tips that make a difference. And stick around until the end for a special freebie just for our listeners. Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline and my today's guest is Brian Gorman, and I'm so happy that he said yes to our interview. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Caroline. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for saying yes again. And I had to laugh because you smiled so beautifully. You make my day, so to say. I'm inspired already. And I would love to introduce you to the audience, of course. You are a certified professional coach specializing in guiding individuals and organizations through significant transitions. With a rich history shaped by the civil rights and anti-Vietnam War movements, your expertise spans decades of change at personal, organizational, and societal levels. Through transforminglives.coach, you support clients from frontline leaders to C-suite executives in achieving their next level of success. Welcome to the Inspired Podcast, Brian Gorman.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, you recognized yourself. So this was your bio. I did not mix up this time. I never mix up, by the way. And my first question is, how did your experiences during the civil rights and anti-Vietnam War movements shape your approach to coaching and change management?
It really was the spark in some ways for all of my professional life since then. The civil rights movement, I remember when I was a young boy in the 1950s and even, I believe, into the 1960s, reading accounts of lynchings in the south of the US. When I went to college, which was 1967-68, I became involved in youth work on the Onondaga Reservation, native indigenous reservation outside of Syracuse, New York. And at the time, the university's mascot was a Native American dressed as a Hollywood Indian, played by a Caucasian fraternity brother, running around like he was drunk. And I knew that this was wrong. I tried to get the university to change the mascot. Unfortunately, I did not succeed, but again, I think the spark was planted. The Onondaga Nation did succeed, but it took another 10 years. And I didn't realize it at the time, but everything in my life, career-wise, has had a thread of change running through it ever since. The anti-Vietnam movement started right around the time I was a freshman. I remember my freshman year, there were anti-Vietnam protests, and they'd have 5 or 6 people, and then there'd be hundreds at the anti-anti campaign. And 2 years later, Kent State happened, the killing of students by the National Guard at Kent State, that led to students around the world shutting down their universities, including at Syracuse. And again, all of this was sort of background information, if you will, not not intentional learning, but background information on what it takes to make change happen.
Oh, I understand. And thank you so much for sharing. This is really insightful, so to say, what you share about your experiences at that time. Now I'm even more inspired, and I would like to know, of course, what strategies do you use to help leaders navigate major transitions while maintaining focus on their goal?
I use Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey.
What does it mean?
Joseph Campbell was a mythologist and psychologist here in the US in the mid 20th century. One of the things he researched was, is there a common pattern across creation myths, across cultures and over time? Is there a common pattern in coming of age myths over time and across cultures and so forth? And what he discovered is that there's one pattern in all myth. And he called it the hero's journey. It's best put forward by Campbell in The Hero with a Thousand Faces. I don't even know anymore if I'm paraphrasing or quoting him. What he said was, while we approach each change as if it's unique and unpredictable, it's not. We take the same change journey over and over and over again. And I think that's such an important message, because if you understand that journey, if you understand how to go from where you are to where you want to be, it doesn't necessarily make it easy, but it makes it easier. And so I have developed my version of the hero's journey based on my, again, decades of experience in organizational change and coaching, because organizations don't change, people change. And so I may be coaching a leader in a personal or professional transformation, or I might be working with a global organization going through a transformation. It's the same journey, just at a different scale.
Wow, I love how you explained the hero's journey. And yeah, of course, I heard it before, but not in that context, of course. And we always think it's something new, it's the unknown we are stepping into, and it is what personal development tells us. You have to step into the unknown, you have to face your fears or something. And you now say it's not the organizations that change, it's the people inside, of course, and we change from the personal side or professionally. We can set goals for ourselves, and you say it's always the same cycle.
It is. The catalysts are different. The obstacles are different. The journey is the same.
You say catalyst. What is if I use the word vehicle? Or is it the same? No.
When I say catalysts, it might be COVID was catalyst for change.
Mm-hmm.
It forced organizations to change how they function, whether they still had to maintain their research labs or their manufacturing facilities or move their offices into personal homes. The catalyst is what ignites the change, if you will.
Wow, I love that. Okay, I have to think about it, of course, to process this, and I have to re-listen to this episode again, of course, even though it's not finished yet. I have another question. How can individuals balance personal growth with professional success during transformative periods in their lives?
Don't try to do everything at once. That's the best answer. The second piece of it is reflection. We sometimes pretend that we're two different people, and we're not. We're one person who, at some points in the day, some points in the week, some points in our lives, are in professional roles, and at other points are in other roles and other capacities. So, and the other piece that's important there, Carolyn, is we all have a limited capacity for change. So that's why I say don't try to do everything at once. You may have to put some things aside or change their scale in order to accomplish other things. And for me, that's actually a part of the second step in the change journey as I define it, which has to do with the second step is preparation, not planning, because we only plan for those things that we're aware of. And so the preparation phase helps make us aware of what we need to plan for. If I'm planning a major personal change as I'm going through let's say I'm preparing to take the exam to become an attorney, which is a life-changing event if I'm successful or if I'm not. At the same time that I'm planning on getting married. Each of those are anchors in my life. I know that on this date I'm going to take the bar exam, and I know what I need to do to prepare. I know on this date I'm getting married. I know what I need to do to prepare. I might not be able to do that all. And so in that second phase, we need to look at all of our anchors. Which ones do we need to hold on to? Which ones do we need to hold more tightly? Which ones do we need to let looser or even let go completely? One of my clients several years ago was planning on retiring to moving to Costa Rica. One of their anchors, things that provided them a sense of stability and security, was their ability to speak English. They lived here in the US. That was the only language that they could speak. They needed to loosen up that anchor and get a new anchor, which was their ability to speak Spanish.
Yes, it makes sense. And I love how you implement the word anchor, because I don't use it so often, but it makes sense. You cannot change everything at once. This is what most people have the tendency. I can say I am a big example of that. And also, I have so much to say to this, So first of all, you cannot do tomorrow's work today. And then that reminds me of the marshmallow test. Most of the people would fail the marshmallow test. They want the one thing at once and not waiting for the 2 marshmallows in 15 minutes or so. Yes.
The other important thing about anchors is, if you think back to COVID, when COVID first came on the scene, if you will, I don't know how many times I heard, everything is changing. Well, not everything was changing. But this human brain of ours is still wired to look out for saber-toothed tigers. And so our attention goes to what is changing. If you become intentional about anchors, bringing anchors into your consciousness, it helps bring the change back into scale. And the final thing, or not, depending on the next question, the final thing about anchors is they're very personal. So I have a great friend who's one of his anchors is a Porsche Boxster, which is a very high-end sports car for those who aren't familiar with it. I don't even own a car. When I was doing anchors workshops online when COVID first hit, basically the structure was I'd tell people what anchors were. They'd go into breakout rooms, come back and talk about what their anchors are. Then I'd talk about how you need to adjust your relationship with them. They'd go back into breakout rooms. After that first breakout, this one gentleman came running back into the Zoom room, if you can run into the Zoom room. He was shouting as he came back into the room, now I get it, now I get it. And so I said, what do you get? He said, I'm a Wall Street lawyer. For years, I've been putting on my suit every day, taking this away into work. When I came home with COVID, I brought all my files, I brought my computer. I would go into my office in the morning, I'd go online, I didn't remember why I was online, I'd pick up my files, I'd open them, I didn't know what to do with them, I'd close them. I got nothing done. And then one day, I put my suit on and went into my home office, and I was back in control. Anchors are personal.
Oh my goodness, yes, now I know. I would have used the word, the word constant, like a constant. And it happened that I said to people, you are my constant in my life. They were always there or something. Yes, so anchor, I know what it is. It comes from maybe you would say Navy, or so, from the ocean side. Also anchor. Right, but also from NLP, I think,
for me, it actually came from Superstorm Sandy. Mm-hmm. I live in Hoboken, which is a city literally across the Hudson River from Manhattan. And our average elevation above sea level is 7 feet. And there are inlets at the north and south end of the city, which is how it flooded. So it was about 2 or 3 days before we could get out of the apartment and walk around. And when I did, up on the northern inlet, people anchor sailboats. And as I got near, I was walking up along the river, there was a sailboat sitting on the sidewalk, still attached to its buoy, still attached to its anchor, but the anchor was not strong enough to maintain its location. As I got up to that northern inlet, there were boats that were just bouncing around like nothing happened. There were boats that were not there anymore. And there were masts sticking out of the water where the anchor held, but there wasn't enough adjustment between the anchor and the boat for it to survive that turbulence.
Yes, the foundation, so to say. Or what a great analogy. I love it. Now I understand, and I'm already looking for anchors in my life, because I would have said, because I turned my life around 180 degrees last year also. So I changed everything, and you tell me the opposite, don't change everything.
You didn't change everything. I'll guarantee you. I will send you, and if any of your listeners want, I'll be happy to share it as well. I have a template to help guide you through identifying what your anchors are, and then if you put that in the context of change, which ones you have to change and how you have to change them.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. This is so generous. Of course, I have another question for you. Let's say, where can we find you? I already mentioned your website, when people want to reach out to you after listening to this episode.
So again, my website is transforminglives.coach, and there is a link there to schedule time with me. And I am Brian, Brian, at transforminglives.coach.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And let's talk about your coaches and mentors. Do you have coaches and mentors for yourself? And who was the best coach you ever had?
The best coach I ever had retired on December 31st. Michael was my coach from 2007 through the end of 2014. So for 17 years. And we met every 2 weeks until he semi-retired a few years ago, and then we met once a month. Sometimes it was more of a friendly conversation because I was sort of on a plateau in my own life. And then at other times, he was the most stupendous coach, helping me prepare for and move through whatever transitions I was facing.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing.
I have actually had, and I think this is important for listeners to think about, I've actually had many mentors along the way, some of whom I never met, some of whom whose voice I never heard. There's a wonderful book called The Art of Pilgrimage, Making Every Journey Sacred by Phil Cuisinot. One of Phil's mentors, quite literally, was Joseph Campbell. And Phil draws from literature, from religious traditions, again, across time, to lay out his version of the hero's journey. And one of the quotes that I will always remember from that book is, "The question begins the quest." For my clients, when they are looking at making major change, the question is, what makes your heart sing?
Yes, that's a great question. What makes your heart sing? And then the quest begins. You said it. And also you talked earlier about planning versus preparedness. And I would like to, we know planning is the rational mind, the conscious mind, and preparedness is you are ready with your heart to say yes intuitively. I would interpret this. So let's talk about your goals and intentions. Do you set goals? And what is one of your next projects?
So I said before, anchors were part of phase 2. Phase 1 begins with creating your story from the future. Not your story about the future, your story from the future. A story from the future is a head, heart, and gut story. It's a story of emotions. So it's not, in 5 years, I'm going to retire and move to Costa Rica. I'm going to have to sell my house. My husband is going to have to sell his house because it's a second marriage for both. We're going to have to learn Spanish. We're going to have to get rid of all of our property. You can talk yourself out of big change very easily that way. It's all up in the head. This was, again, a client of mine. Their story from the future was, I can't believe we did it. We woke up this morning in our new home in Costa Rica. The ocean breeze is blowing through the windows. We can hear the chatter of Spanish down the street. It wasn't easy. We had to sell 2 houses in the middle of the housing crisis. We had to learn Spanish. We had to find a new way to relate to our children and grandchildren. And we're here. Because our mind, and a little bit of neuroscience, our minds can't tell the difference between story and reality. That story begins to create new neural networks, new pathways in our brains, so that when we run into those obstacles, our brain says, there's got to be a way over, under, around, or through, because I know what it's like on the other side. So that's where we begin. Then you get into the prepare, so now I know the changes I have to make to my anchors. I know the skills that I need to learn, the licensure or whatever it is. Now I can begin to plan that. And planning is very much, for me, like agile. We're not planning the next 3 years. Depending on whether it's an organization, what size it is, whether it's a person, it might be a few months. But we know where we're going to end up. So what are those mindset changes? What are those behavior changes? What are those new things we have to learn, the new things we have to do? When do they have to go? We can set up those milestones. But it's like you're climbing a mountain, and there was a landslide since the trail was set. You have to change direction But that doesn't mean that you have to give up on your destination. But if you spend the next, I have had clients have to dot every I, cross every T. By the time they set out, their plan is out of date.
We have to be willing to pivot. So I would say pivot, and you use the word agile. This is also very beautiful. I have to store it in my, new vocabulary, so to say. Thank you so much for sharing. I never saw my goal so clearly because you put it so beautifully. So I'm familiar with that, thinking from the end or focusing from your goal, not on your goal. Of course, it is like reverse engineering. It's exactly what I learned for the last 3 years. So I have this big vision for myself. I received it and I reverse engineer, I visualize every day, and I see the steps. But now with your Costa Rica example, it is very beautiful to see. So you create first the vision and you go to the day. I always tell my clients, I'm a coach as well. So I tell my clients, go to the day after you achieved your goal. And then you also receive people are congratulating you on achieving that goal, and you visualize, you hear their voices, and you whatever with your 5 senses, and then you program your subconscious mind, of course, to do the steps, to put it into action, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So beautiful. I'm so grateful for our interview. I asked you already where we can find you, and about your goals as well. So I think this was my last question, and now it's time for your final thoughts to the audience, please.
Stories play such an important part in our lives. We act as if our brains are supercomputers, rational. That's not our brain. We had stories before we had language. We draw them in the dirt, we paint them on hides and walls, cave walls. And you are an incredible storyteller. We all are. We are telling ourselves stories all the time. I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too heavy, I'm too skinny, I'm not qualified, I'm this, I'm that. Those are stories. And we take them as if they're fact, and we live our lives based on those stories. And whether it's a small story or a big story, you can change your story. And you can change your life.
Thank you so much. I'm speechless. We get to choose which story we want to tell ourselves. We can change the narrative inside, and we have the choice. So please keep making those inspired choices every day. This was your podcast episode. Thank you so much, Brian Gorman, for being my guest today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too, and I see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to Inspired Choice today. I'm thrilled to have you on this journey of growth and transformation. Don't forget to hit follow or subscribe to stay connected and never miss an episode. And here's something special. Grab your free 20-minute breakthrough session with me. It's designed to help you kickstart or level up your business. Just check out the show notes for more. Until next time, keep making those inspired choices. See you in the next episode.